afternoon. If it's 5 o'clock Eastern, that means it's Let's Talk Personal, and that means I am your host, Frances Reimers. Thanks for tuning in today. I appreciate you. If you would like to join the conversation today, you can do so on Twitter at LTP Brand Radio or on Instagram at Let's Talk Personal. And if you would like to talk personally to me, and I know that you do, and I appreciate all of your messages, good and bad, you can connect with me on Instagram at Firestarter CEO or on Twitter at your Firestarter. A couple of quick notes before we go ahead and get started today. Firestarter, that is my company. We have launched a new initiative where I am offering mini consultations. So if you don't have the time, budget, or patience to do a full personal brand consultation, but you have questions about brand, public relations, content creation, how to have a better LinkedIn account, whatever the case may be, you can schedule a 30-minute compressed personal brand session with me. So go ahead and shoot me a DM or an email. Or if you have my phone number, you can call that too, and we'll get you scheduled up at a time that is convenient. We have a super fun and exciting show today. This is going to be a lot of fun, especially everything that's going on in the world of sports today. So joining me live via remote from Las Vegas, today we have the host of the Sports Circus, Sal, my guy Sal, joining me from Las Vegas. How are you?
Mighty fine. How are you today?
Good, good. What's on your hat?
That would be.
Oh, look at that.
NBC
Okay. For a split second there, I thought you were wearing an Ohio State hat, and I was starting to get very confused of why you would be wearing an Ohio. Like, I was so confused. I'm so sorry. I'm so confused. For those of you who don't know, I wanted you to take a second and let the world know, because not all of my weekly viewers are big into sports. So tell us a little about yourself and a little about the Sports Circus.
Well, the Sports Circus was started about a year and a half ago, and it is a listener participation satire show where we'll talk about anything that you can compete in, anything whatsoever. Of course, the four major sports, plus a whole heck of a lot more. We've covered roller derby. What could be better? We had roller derby, believe it or not, underwater ice hockey. We've had the craziest things, but what we like to do is we like to involve everybody with what we're talking about. Right. And really, the phone lines stay open. And if you want to come in and join the circus, it's a circus every day, and we prove it.
And so one of my favorite competitive sports is definitely competitive eating. And so I'm sure during the 4th of July holiday, you guys are hot on the topic of Joey Chestnut and what is it, the Black Widow? Is that the woman who is always the winner of the competitive eating? Is she? Yeah, she's a Black Widow. Competitive eating, that is a legitimate sport, in my opinion, competitive eating. Like, have you ever done a competitive eating competition?
When I was about 12 years old, I entered a pie eating contest. That's about it. My brother is a competitive eater. He's one of those guys.
Really?
Right. His photos on the wall in different restaurants and whatnot. It's ridiculous.
Okay, so now all kinds of questions come to mind. This just like opened up a whole other cloud thought. So what, if you can act as his representative, what made him decide to go into competitive eating? What was the decision there?
I don't know. He used to compete with me at the all-you-can-eat ribs. And so we'd eat 4 or 5 slabs apiece, but it got to a point where he had to outdo me.
Right.
And when it comes to certain foods, I mean, he is an absolute beast.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm not really sure what transcended him from competing with his brother to competing with the masses. Not really sure.
And is this his full-time gig, or does he have a 9-to-5 job as well?
It's a regular job. It's just, this is something that he just loves to do, and he has a passion for it.
I think you would absolutely have to have a passion for it. I mean, I was in one competitive eating competition that was my senior year of high school, and I made it like 4 bites through, and I was like, what am I doing? This is like, humans are not supposed to consume food this way. It was very uncomfortable. No one's supposed to eat a McDonald's hamburger that as quickly as I had to consume it. That's amazing. How many competitions is he in a year? Like, does he do this regionally? Does he do this nationally?
I don't know. I mean, regionally, he's done several. I remember he took on, I believe it was a 5-pound burrito at one place. He took on a bowl of fire hot soup in Little Tokyo in LA, and he ate it. within, I think he had a half an hour to eat it. I think he ate it in about 14 minutes, but he was laying down on the bench outside, just sweat pouring from him.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. I can't believe he punished himself like that. But this is the guy that does it. I don't know anybody else that eats like him. Mm-mm. In fact, even nieces and nephews, they call him Uncle Food.
That's actually pretty funny. He needs to brand that. He needs to have like a whole line of Uncle Food stuff. He can take and run with that idea. He's welcome. So back to the show, because the show it is a circus, but it has a revolving cast of very colorful characters, and you have a lot of guest contributors that come through the show. Tell those watching at home a little bit about who these people are and how they come through.
But when the show was started, it was basically myself. It was an intern and a board operator at 6 a.m. on Saturdays. That nobody was awake in Las Vegas.
No.
Nobody. I mean, everybody's just kind of going to bed at about 5 o'clock.
I was going to say, usually I'm going to bed at that time in Vegas.
Right. So I figured, well, what could be better than to add a cast of characters and a cast of experts in particular sports that I have go-to people that I could call upon, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, hockey, mixed martial arts, boxing. We have them all. Right. And so I built a team that complements the dialogue in ways that I just don't know everything about sports. I know a little bit, but not they do about their sports.
Right.
And then I added an adversary from a show that I was on previously on an ESPN affiliate in Los Angeles.
Right.
And so I used to butt heads all the time. Every day we would call in. I was Sal the bookmaker on that show, and he was Lon Lenny. And so every day it's kind of like the audience would look forward to the interaction between these two guys from Vegas and from LA.
Right.
And eventually on my show, after that one ended, I said, well, hey, Lenny, why don't you come onto my show? So I brought my adversary over to my show. and dialogue is great. And people love it. And we have over 3 million people hitting our website every month.
And so there's definitely the fireworks during the show. Is there fireworks after the show, or once the mics turn off, you're both back to your separate corners and all is right with the world?
It's for entertainment purposes only.
Right. Some people it isn't. Some people it's that's really how they feel about each other. So I was just kind of wondering. But you also you mentioned very briefly that you have folks from all different kinds of walks of life, and that come and are contributors to the shows, because you can't possibly know everything about every sport. And one of them is a dear friend and fellow University of Wyoming alum. So for those of you that are watching, and most of the state of Wyoming is watching at this moment in time, Theo Radliff is one of his contributors. He comes on. How often does Theo pop on there?
You know what? Since basketball season is here, Theo's going to be on. I'm going to guess he'll be on next week. But in the middle of basketball season, he normally shows up about once a week.
Right. Yeah, so Theo pops on, and it's always great to see him on there and see him doing well. Of course, all of we Wyomingites love to see other Wyomingites doing well, and so it was when I actually looked up Sal in the show. It's such a pleasant surprise to see that Theo was part of that cast of characters. But you have other folks too, who are some of the other regular contributors, so people can tune in if they're fans of those people.
Well, some of the people that we bring on, for example, we'll start with the fighting world.
Right.
We have a time WBC boxing champion. He has 4 belts. His name is Bronco Billy Wright. He's 52-4. Nobody wants to fight him. He's 6'5". He's 350 pounds. His head is this big. It's scary. He's one of those guys that you don't want to see across the ring. So Billy has 4 belts. We also have Lisa King, the Black Widow from the mixed martial arts world. She's a Muay Thai fighter, just as good as they come. Right. Lisa's a mixed martial arts woman. We have Alicia Thompson, a WNBA champion from the Seattle Storm, as a regular on the show. Right. We have an 8-year NFL linebacker, starting linebacker from the Miami Dolphins and the Houston Texans. His name is Marlon Greenwood. Marlon's a regular on the show as well. And of course, when it comes to hockey, 3-time Stanley Cup champion from the Chicago Blackhawks and the LA Kings, Colin Frazier, and Colin's in every Tuesday. The dialogue's fantastic with these people. It really is.
Right. Because they're so passionate about it, and it's great that they're staying involved with the sport and bringing that extra special perspective that really only somebody who has actually played the sport and been there on the ice or on the court or in the ring, whatever the case may be, they're the only people that can kind of bring that perspective. So it is kind of interesting to hear that dialogue. But this isn't the show that you're on now. This is definitely not your first rodeo in terms of radio shows. Like, you've been in the game a hot minute. Talk a little bit about your evolution through your time in radio.
Well, I didn't set out. The funny thing is, I didn't set out to be a radio personality.
Right.
A friend of mine, you may know him as the former quarterback for the LA Rams, Jim Everett.
Mm-hmm.
So Jim's a friend of mine, and Jim asked me to be involved in a company. And it just so happens that the company had a relationship with a radio show. They're trying to push their sports technology through this radio show.
Right.
And so Jim asked me if I could handle the relationship between the radio show and this company. And I said, yeah, I could do it, not a problem. And so it turns out that they invited me to the show. They liked the way everything was going with the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got on the show with them, it was electric. Right. It was great. In fact, they invited me back the next day. And then the next day, I'm like, well, guys, I'm not in Southern California. I'm in Las Vegas. They said, no problem. Just call in. I'm like, okay, fine. Okay. I'll call in.
Right.
So it became regular. And they said, all right, this guy's name is Sal. He lives in Vegas. He's Italian. He's got to be a bookie. So they tagged the name on me of Sal the Bookmaker.
Right.
Right. So I was a regular on this show. And that was on a 50,000 watt blowtorch in Southern California that blasted out to half the country.
Right.
And so I did a regular Vegas report, and I was a regular on there every day for about a year and a half, thereabouts. Right. And it just evolved to where I said, I think I love what they do, but I think I could add a little bit something special to this. I started bringing them special guests. I said, wait a minute, I'm going to do my own show, right, and I'm going to bring my own special guest on. And for those people that have seen the Sports Circus or listened to the Sports Circus, because once in a while I'll do a Facebook Live.
Right.
And we did a television piece on Friday afternoons at 2 p.m. But for those people that have participated and watched the show, they know what we had brought on. But we brought the flavor on. And when I brought Long Beach Lenny onto the show, which was my adversary from the other show, the one that I was mentioning, here it just evolved into kind of from a hobby to this is a very serious show.
Right, right. And
that's really the evolution of it. I wasn't looking to be a radio show host.
Right. Right. Well, yeah, because I found it interesting, in your bio, you most definitely were. It didn't look like you were setting out to be a radio show host. I mean, once upon a time, you actually were a baseball player. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was a left-handed pitcher, and I was one of those promising prospects that threw really exceedingly hard. When I was 18 years of age, I threw 97 miles an hour. I never threw anything straight.
Right.
And it was fun and exciting, but I got myself into an injury situation, lost some scholarships, went the bumpy road back through, and then I tore a rotor cuff, and that was the end of it.
Yeah. It's tough. Did you, on that note of being in baseball and getting cut, did you see that the Mets cut Tim Tebow today?
Yeah. I did not see it, but that's great news.
Yeah, they cut him. I don't know why, but I have some random soft spot for that guy. I'm Jewish, so clearly he and I are not on the same theological page. But I don't know what it is, but I have a soft spot for that guy. And last year I was down at Met spring training, helping them with some branding stuff, and he's just the nicest guy. He's like one person that you just never want to see anything bad happen to, but. I feel terrible, but when I read the news today that they cut him, I was like, okay, good. Because I'm like, knowing how, and I mean, this very well, how difficult it is to come up through baseball. And, he's taking the spot of a guy who really wants to be there and really is trying his hardest to move his way up the organization. He doesn't need the money. He doesn't need the fame. I get that he's a competitor and he wants to compete, but he's taking the spot of a guy that doesn't have his connections. And I felt bad for a split second about him being cut, but then I was like, why am I sad? His life will go on just fine. But why are you so happy that he was shown the door today?
But look, the fact is, Tim Tebow was $100,000 sideshow for the New York Mets. First of all, second of all, taking a roster spot for somebody that's trying to get to the big leagues for real and not be the sideshow.
Right.
So Tim Tebow, although a great human,
yes,
he is not a baseball player.
Right.
And if he was a baseball player, first and foremost, he was stuck in rookie ball, A ball all last year.
Right.
That's it. He was that good. Number one, here's one thing. If you look at Tim Tebow from a batting stance, now as a pitcher, this is what I looked at, and I know you could see this. All right, when people line up, see their knuckle, they're big and little, right?
Yep.
Well, when they drag their bat through the strike zone, what happens is it's a very slow motion. Now, as a pitcher, I'm looking at the guy on deck, and I'm looking to see how he's holding his knuckles. Now, if he has them rotated to big and big, this tells me a lot. Tim Tebow did not do this. What this tells me is that he's going to, whoever it is, they're going to roll the bat over in the strike zone. The bat through the strike zone is going to be a lot faster, and they could turn on an inside fastball. Now, Shohei Ohtani with the Angels has the same problem. He's like this here. Very slow bat speed through the strike zone. Tim Tebow had that problem. Tim Tebow was never going to be a big league hitter.
No. I mean, seeing him play in person last year, I was like, you know, once you get past the star factor of seeing him out there, and I was like, oh, there's Tim Tebow, yeah. And then after that, I was like, yawn. I'm not interested in this. And part of the other reason that I was down at Met Spring Training was a kid from Wyoming, from my hometown, plays for the Mets, and so I definitely wanted to see him play in person. And good family, good kid, and so it was neat to actually see him. And whenever I think about people being cut and those sorts of things, I think of him because I'm like, Tim Tebow, get out of the way and let people who this is their livelihood, this is what they're here to do. I kind of feel the same way about all of this nonsense right now with LeBron James being recruited by Juju over at the Steelers. I'm like, no, like there are so many guys right now in the NFL that are vying for a spot. LeBron James is doing just fine over in the NBA. Like he can stay there and let some of these guys that are trying to work their way through the NFL system get a spot at the Steelers. Like the Steelers do not need LeBron James. I don't know what that's about. I don't know what it is, but I just find the whole thing very obnoxious. It's like, what are you doing? Like there's only so many spots to go around. LeBron James does not need one. But speaking of NFL, go ahead.
Did you notice you said the Pittsburgh Steelers and not the Cleveland Browns?
Right. Well, and it's interesting because the Cleveland Browns are making big moves. I mean, I was just going to go ahead.
He's the hometown kid. The hometown kid, if he was going to even entertain the idea of playing football, he should be playing for his Cleveland Browns.
I mean, you would think that, but I don't even think he's going to stay in Cleveland all that much longer. I think he's off to LA and that is going to be what it is. But speaking of football, today is technically free agency started today at, what is it, start at 4? Is that when it's officially trades can actually go in? But people have already been in motion about free agency now since, pretty much since God was a boy. Who do you think is netting out the best in free agency right now?
As far as teams
go? Yeah. I think we all know who, money-wise as an individual, has netted out the best in free agency, but team-wise?
I think team-wise, I think the team that's making the best moves, some would argue with me, I'm gonna say two teams. One of them is the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs, they are absolutely loaded.
Right.
And I mean, they're loaded.
Right.
And ironically, with their last deal with the Rams did very well on that deal.
Right.
But I believe the Cleveland Browns are making the most noise, and they're going to continue because remember they have 2 of the first 4 draft picks.
I know, which is super crazy. it hurts my heart a little bit to hear you say that the Kansas City Chiefs are making out well. As a lifelong Broncos fan, I always want the Kansas City Chiefs to do too poorly. But I do agree with you that I think they're making some pretty strong moves. So we'll definitely see. I think draft day, I think the NFL draft this year is going to be very interesting. Normally I don't watch the draft, but this year I think I'm definitely going to tune in because I want to see where the chips fall. But most importantly, being a University of Wyoming alum, I'm very interested in where Josh Allen is going to be, to which team he is going to arrive at. Of course, almost every single person in Wyoming wants him to go with the Broncos because it's just like, the quarterback and the cheerleader getting married and living happily ever after. But that may not happen. What is some of your draft projections?
Well, I'm looking at the Cleveland Browns are more than likely going to take Saquon Barkley as their number one. I believe they're going to take Sam Darnold as their quarterback. Mm-hmm. Sam is a tail guy. He's not a big mouth guy. Right. Sam is going to do very, very well in Cleveland. Right. Baker Mayfield, the wrong fit there. Josh Allen will probably find himself in New York. Everybody is Josh Rosen. I don't think so. I think Josh Allen's going to go to New York, because he is clearly the best quarterback in the draft. Right. No doubt.
Yes. And I say that with 100% bias, but yes, he is the best quarterback in the draft for sure.
And people aren't they're not giving him the same value. And we had the same problem like that with Carson Wentz. Yeah. And Carson Wentz was a +2. He was a +2 over the next quarterback. Right. A +2. That was over the kid that went to the Rams. I forget his name, Jared Goff.
Oh, yeah.
Carson Wentz was clearly better, but everyone was saying, well, geez, he went to a small school. That doesn't matter. Right. Josh Allen is the guy. He is the class of the quarterbacks coming out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm extremely biased. I'm going to have the University of Wyoming athletic director on the show here in a couple of weeks, and that's pretty much all he wants to talk about is Josh Allen, which I'm more than happy to do. But I really do. I watched the combine. I was very impressed by Josh and thought he showed up and did what he needs to do. I mean, the guy threw the ball 70 yards down the field with absolutely no problem whatsoever. So I think he's going to do well. Like I said, and this draft, for some reason, people asking about players' sexuality and is their mom a hooker? Like, what is going on? And these questions, it's like, is that allowed? Like, you would never ask that in a job interview. Why are they asking that at the draft?
Well, how is that allowed there, but it's politically incorrect everywhere else?
Right? I mean, I when I saw that in his interview, I was blown away. I was like, what is going on here? Like, the world is very topsy-turvy. Speaking of topsy-turvy things, let's talk about Tiger Woods for a second. Holy moly. Coming out this past weekend and just breathing life into golf. I mean, people who have not watched golf in forever were tuning in droves to see Tiger Woods pull it in. Where did this come from? Like, was I not paying attention and Tiger Woods was making a slow roll back to the top and that was just his day? Like, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, Eldrick, which is his real name, I look at a guy like him and say, look, he was on top for so long. Right. And at some point, athletically, right, when your career is sort of over, when you're on that downswing, right, you have it's kind of like the defibrillator, right? So he had the golf defibrillator, I think, connected to him, right? And look, he was always great, even as a kid. Yeah. One of my friends lived across the street from him. They grew up together. They're childhood friends in Cypress, California, and Eldrick played with his golf things just from the day he could walk all the way till where he is today, right? Right. But remember, when you have it in you, when you are an expert, you're always an expert. Right. It doesn't matter where you're at in your career as it goes up and down. Ultimately, this guy could still play. He'll be playing on the senior tour. He'll be playing on the Legends Tour. Right. Because he's that guy. Right. And he has to dig down deep and get it. I think what he did is he finally had the day of reckoning, like, hey, these young kids are doing what I know I can already do. Hell, I can compete with them.
Right. And the Twitter chatter on Sunday was absolutely phenomenal of watching him play and seeing all of these people who were in his corner, and because everyone loves a comeback story, and he certainly was coming back with strength. And I hate to say it, but the world of golf needs him back. They've gone down in ratings and interest, and having him back and playing well re-injects some life into that sport. And I'm saying that as an actual golf fan who watches and plays. The sport needed him back, and it feels good to have him back in that spot. But of course there was the controversy from the left of what he did and who he is and blah blah blah. Look, like, just because you do something in your life, are you not allowed to be successful ever again? Does that mean you're never allowed to have, any sort of redemption? So there was the Twitter chatter on Sunday of people for and against for his return was quite entertaining to watch. But I was happy to see him back, and I think the world of golf is definitely, I know from a ratings and advertising perspective, they were definitely happy to see him back. Thinking about your time in radio, and we've been talking about different sports and that. How have you seen kind of how sports media, especially and particularly how your involvement in sports media, how have you seen that evolve over the years in terms of how the athletes are wanting to engage and wanning to be seen when they come and they interview with you or they appear on the show in some sort of way?
I think a lot of people, they join into the social media world. Some know what they're getting into. Right. Others really don't know what they're getting involved with. Because once you ask for the spotlight and you're a big star, now it's constantly on. It's like reality TV. Yep. And you can't escape it. Nope. There's no escaping it. Nope. So every little thing you say, you tweet, whatever, everything you put out there, it is criticized by absolutely everybody. Yes. And so I think that there's a time and place for social media. Right. And even as our show, the only thing that we really do is we utilize, if we have a special guest, right, like what we had Santana Moss on last week. Yes. So the day of, because social media turns so very quickly, yes, we put it out there literally a couple of hours before Santana came on. Mm-hmm. So his greatest release is out there, and it doesn't get lost 45 items down the list. Right, right. It's the idea of Craigslist, right? Right. You just constantly, every time there's a new one, it goes all the way down. So we wanted to keep Santana at the top. Sure. So we don't have a lot of things out there. But I think when I look at how Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, how all of these mediums utilize and the advertisers are manipulating all the athletes from it. Right. But they're manipulating for dual value, right? They both make money. Mm-hmm. I believe that social media is badly misused, and I'd like to see a little bit more organization from the athlete side, and I'm talking about maybe a PR firm such as yourself. You're an expert in the business. You've been doing this for 20 odd years, whatever.
I'm not that old. Dial it back. Not that old, but thank you. Time out. Only 15 years. Time out.
Know that it's okay, but no, but the idea, you've been doing it for so long. Yes. You know how to handle the media, and you know what's best for the brand building, yes, of that athlete. Whereas the athlete, they're an athlete. That's right, all they do. Right. Right. It's your job because you're the expert. They should let people like yourself that know what they're doing do the job.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right, and not just because you're talking about what I do, but having this show and people who come on my show, some have publicists, some don't, and it hurts my heart a little bit when athletes don't realize that more is not better. Appearing on every show that will have you, or doing every sponsorship that dials your phone doesn't necessarily mean a better life for you. You need to be strategic about where you put your face, where you put your likeness, and, almost be a little more discerning across all mediums of what you're doing, because, the advertisers really are winning. If you take a look on Instagram, all the time you see current athletes, former athletes, and they're like, oh, I really love XYZ product. And I always write to them and I'm like, is XYZ product paying you? And some will write back to me and be like, no. I'm like, then why are you saying that you love their product? Like, don't do that. Don't do that. I'm not saying you can't love a product, but if that product's not loving you, then don't use your likeness.
Well, Francis, what this reminds me of is sometimes a hot actor or actress will get, I'm saying hot in the box office.
Right.
They'll get things thrown at them.
Right.
And they'll do everything, but then they realize some of these projects that they're working on are really bad. In fact, they're so bad that they'll do the project, but they won't take the credit.
Right.
They don't want the credit coming down because it's going to wreck their IMBD.
Right. Yeah, they'll actually be like, no, don't put me on there. It's fine. You like I'm dating myself a little bit, but sometimes things would go right from the movie theater. Oh, I mean, I guess same process. It goes right from the movie. It doesn't even go to the movie theater. It goes right to DVD or back in the day VHS. It's those kinds of projects where the actors are like, no, don't you don't have to give me the credit on it. But it's interesting. I think you're absolutely right in the fact that the advertisers, in my opinion, the advertisers are winning. They think that a lot of the athletes think that they're winning because their face is out there, and it does help their brand. But really, the advertiser is winning at the end of the day because they're getting a face and a name at a bargain basement price. I tried to explain to an athlete just the other day that if I hire a voiceover artist to appear in a commercial, I have to pay the union rates for that voiceover artist because they're in the union. And I have to pay a certain amount of money if that voiceover is used on a website or if it's in a commercial or whatever. And I have to pay that person based on the media buy. And that price, the larger the media buy, the larger the price to that voiceover actor or actress. That voiceover actor or actress doesn't get paid in shoes or sticks of gum. They get cold hard cash. Why? Because their voice is being used in this advertisement. Like, why shouldn't an athlete have the same thought process? If an advertiser is coming to you and saying, I'd like you to be in my ad or I'd like you to endorse my product, they should approach it the same way that an actor or an actress would if they were taking part in something that would be used in an ad buy and say, well, how far is this reaching? And you need to pay me based on how far this is reaching because this is my likeness. And I know some people are like, that's awful and you shouldn't do it, but why not? Why shouldn't they profit if the advertiser is trying to profit off of them? But that's my huge soapbox, whatever. This is what I get paid the big bucks to do. But I think you're absolutely right that it's being manipulated and it's a manipulation, but I think it's the advertisers that are winning. Switching gears ever slightly, for those of you at home don't realize that Sal wears his radio hat and he wears his former athlete hat, but you also, I saw a very interesting line in your bio that totally caught my eye, and I was like, what is this? That you have managed and been a creative director for some bands. So what was that experience like? Because that's completely different than what you're doing right now.
Well, there's a very long story behind it, but I got
there
myself
usually
involved.
Is.
Right. So I got myself involved in the middle of something, trying to help a friend of mine that I've known for 25 years.
Right.
And he happened to be a member of a band that's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Right.
And he's an incredible talent, an unbelievable talent.
Right.
Remember, when you're with an artist, a lot of times they're an artist.
Right.
And they want to take control of the direction. And here's the problem. When the creative people are doing this, they're all over the place. You have no idea where they're going. Yes. And so, look, I did this for a short time. I managed, I did a lot of creative work, as you had stated.
Right.
It was fun, but it wasn't fun. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So look, I can at least say I dipped my toe into the water, but
Right.
it's not something that I would like to do in the long run. I just did it to help somebody out.
Right.
And it was certainly interesting. And being involved in that industry and having really strong ties to the film industry is something that I can't say that I'm proud to have.
Oh, okay.
It's,
Interesting.
it's,
Do
it's
tell.
only because of the personalities that are in that world.
I see.
And when somebody says, this is my favorite thing, if you ever want to put anybody down on the West Coast, you
Right.
just say, you're so Hollywood or you're so LA. That's it. That's the worst thing you could call anybody. It's the worst.
I can I definitely understand that. I have to say that LA is one of my least favorite cities in the US to visit. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I'm clearly an East Coaster. Let me just put it that way. LA is something, but it's such an interesting experience, and I'm sure it probably. I'm guessing this was before you were in radio, right? And so,
Yeah, I was actually in the middle of the other show that I was
okay.
participating on, so it was running concurrently.
Right. And so I'm sure the information was useful back and forth between one another that maybe helped kind of push you in a more creative direction with the radio show, or not really?
Nope,
No.
apple and an orange.
Nope.
It,
None. None.
it was so different. I can't explain it. I mean, it was just an anomaly. I,
Right.
I, I could never plan it. And frankly, I would never want to travel down that path again.
Right.
It's just a path that I believe that if you have good PR, if you have good representation,
Right.
folks, just stick with the representation you have. Don't jump around. If you have a manager, stick with the manager.
Right.
Work with the manager. Do
Right.
the right. Francis, for 15 odd years, you've been doing what you're doing.
Yep.
And people like you. They keep coming back to you because you're the consummate pro.
Right.
You don't go out of your area. You stay where you ought to be, just as your clients stay where they ought to be, right?
Right.
Your
Right.
job is to enhance the brand.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing whether it's music or whether it's you're on camera,
Right.
whether you're on the big screen, you're on commercials, it doesn't matter. You're in print. It's
Right.
all the same thing. Let the pro like yourself do what they're supposed to do.
Right. I completely agree with that. It's very interesting that in my industry, in personal branding, there's a lot of people who are coming online that are starting personal branding companies, but they have no background in PR or marketing or anything. They, were famous once upon a time or whatever the case may be, and they're like, "Well, I can be in personal branding because I have a brand." Well, yes, sure, okay. Technically, you probably can, but does that mean you should? I don't know. Probably not. And so my market is starting to get oddly saturated, which is interesting. But talking about market saturation on your side of the coin, it feels like everybody and their mom is starting a radio show or a podcast or something to that effect. How do you feel that everybody coming into this space, whether it's through a traditional radio show such as yours or an online radio station such as this or podcast, do you feel that's enhancing the industry, hurting the industry? Is competition a good thing here, or are we starting to kind of water ourselves down?
Well, I believe that content is king.
Hmm.
So if good content, whether you're online or whether you're on terrestrial radio like we are,
Right.
if you have good content, you're going to rise to the top.
Right.
Now, from all the people starting their own homegrown shows, I've seen some really bad ones, and I mean bad.
Yeah.
You got to remember, what is the training of the people? In other words, their professional training, not as a broadcaster,
Right.
but what is life training?
Right.
What have they done in their lives? Can they affect people like you and me and the balance of the listening audience?
Right.
Is their diction clear and
Right.
concise?
Right.
Do they speak with tact? Do they
Right.
speak with empathy? Are they monotone?
Right.
There's so much that goes into this that people just seem to forget.
Right.
Oh, by the way, there's a technical side to this too. So not only do you need excellent content that
Right.
is saleable,
Right.
it's got to be saleable. Who's going to listen otherwise?
Right. Well, I mean, I tell clients all the time that the worst thing you want is junk content. You might as well not be out there at all if all you're producing is junk content. So if you're going to put something together and you're going to put something out there, take the time to make sure that it's is the best as it possibly can be. And is the content you're putting out there really necessary? Is anybody really benefiting from what you're putting out there? But you bring up the good point of diction. Can you understand them? Are they poised? Those are all awesome things and things that people, I think, underestimate. But the other thing that you and I both know, because we actually talked about this offline, is having a very thick skin. Because if you put yourself out there, stuff comes back to you. I tell my producer here all the time about the hate mail that I get after the show. People commenting on everything from my hair to my clothes to whatever. But people don't realize that if you put yourself out there in that way, you're going to get some nastiness in return. I won't make you say the nastiest thing that someone ever said or did, but you know what I'm saying, right? That you need to have definitely need to have a thick skin if you're going to be in this industry.
Well, I'm the villain on my show. I produce and host it, but I'm also the villain.
Right.
And my co-host is the everything with cherries on top and hype and all this other nonsense. And I don't buy into that. In fact, I have a button, one of my sound drops, and it's an explosion sound.
Jacob, can I get an explosion? Can I get an explosion? He's like, no. Yeah.
Well, I'll bring you on to my show. You call in and you'll hear the explosion, because as soon as Lenny says something,
right,
if he something that just sets me off, especially if he starts talking about Wrigley Field. Now, I'm from Chicago,
right,
and I have seen 100 baseball games there.
Right.
Lenny's never been there. He's only enamored with the idea. So for me,
right,
I blow up every chance I get because it's a crap hole. From the rafters, it's awful. It's absolutely awful. Oh, it's the history. Get out of here with the history.
Yeah.
But my point, I'm the villain, and people call in, or people will send emails and hate mail, like you say, oh, why do you poo-poo everything? Get over it.
Yeah.
You're a big boy.
I actually find some of my hate mail pretty entertaining, because I'm like, what people don't realize, this social media world that we live in, this instant gratification world that we live in, if you're taking the time to write me hate mail, you are obviously listening, you are obviously paying attention, and you obviously have time on your hands. So I appreciate you for all of the above. I mean, some of my hate mail is just downright, just actually very entertaining. But and some of it's graphic. I mean, I get things sent through my hate mail or I consider hate mail. They are doing it in a non-hateful way, but I mean, things get sent. People just have no filter. They have no filter. We live in a world where there's no filter anymore. But a lot of people, a girlfriend of mine recently started her own podcast, and she didn't realize that people would dial in or email her or whatever with nasty things. And I'm like, what did you think was going to happen? You're putting yourself out there in a way, like it's gonna come back to you in a huge way. Do you guys allow for people to call into the show, right?
Oh yeah, it's listener participation.
And what has been just the most wackadoo call that you guys have ever had into the show?
Oh boy. We get some of those, and I think, believe it or not, one of the funniest and most ridiculous calls we had was actually from one of our guests. Oh. And it was from a year ago. It was from 1 year and 1 week ago. It was 53 weeks ago.
Okay.
The guest, he was a great guest, but the dialogue that came out of him was remarkably unpredictable.
Oh.
And like we had, I remember in the radio station, it was on one of our NBC affiliates, here in Las Vegas.
Right.
And they were running a cannabis commercial. Okay. And so right before we came back from break,
right,
and welcome back to Sports Circus, right, and he goes, hey, you got some of that that cannabis that you guys have legalized over there. And so the whole section, it started off with a whole dialogue for 3 or 4 minutes on that, and I'm just like, hey, where to go with it. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess he's passing it on the left-hand side. I don't know.
Right.
It was fun dialogue, and that was certainly one that was unpredictable, just like with
Right.
the roller derby.
Right.
Yeah.
What's with roller derby?
The dialogue that comes out of the roller derby personnel is
Oh.
really what you'll have to invite them onto your show, and you'll
I
understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I definitely will. I've definitely attended roller derby, but maybe I just haven't been paying attention to the cast of colorful characters that comes out of that. That's interesting. Yeah, we had our guest on last week. Um, was definitely not scripted or in the helpful notes that I provided in advance, but he was sharing an excerpt from a book he has written, and he was talking about like sexual escapades from high school, and I'm like, oh dear Lord, oh dear Lord. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I was like, oh my gosh. And I thought he would just like say the sentence and that would be the end of it. But he kept chatting and it wasn't offending me, but I was like, oh my God, if somebody has this show on while they're in the office or their kids are in the car, I'm like, oh no. And sure enough, I got a message the next day from somebody that was like, Francis, you needed to mark that episode as not safe for work because it was not safe for work. I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't know he was gonna say that, but it's live. What are you gonna do?
Well, hold that thought for a second, because how many people
Right.
are so offended by everything,
Yes.
absolutely everything? And I tell
Yes.
people, look, I'm not here to be your hero. I'm not here to be anything. I'm here to have a dialogue. And if you
Right.
want to call in, I say go ahead and call in, but you never know what you're going to get. We're a circus there, and we prove it every day.
Right.
So you never know what you're going to get. So if you don't have thick skin, don't
Right.
call in.
Right.
Because I'm not proud of you. I'm not going to rock you like a little bit. Get out of here.
Well, I mean, we're not, we're not all that wild and crazy on this show, but we're also not regulated by the FCC. So I always inform every guest that, say what you want to say, just keep in mind that this will be in a YouTube clip that's on the internet forever and ever. So normally things stay pretty tame. Dick pics come up a lot on the show because that's a big thing happening in social media right now. But this guy last week, what he said, it hit a nerve with people, and I got messages about it, and I was like, what did you want me to do? I'm not going to cut the guy off when he's talking about his book. That's rude. And plus it was funny. So, what are you going to, what are you going to do? But you're absolutely right. I do think that it's interesting. Like, I just think we're getting more and more and more sensitive towards what other people are saying or doing. It's just like, live your life, live your life and stop worrying so much about what other people are doing and saying. And if someone's going to tune into a show like the Sports Circus or even my show, like if you're that uptight, did you not watch previous shows? Did you not read the promos? Like, what did you think that you were getting here? This is not, NPR, the banjo show or whatever it is. Like, we're a different breed of people. What did you think you were going to get?
Right. Well, what I tell people, this is the best. This is one of my favorite things.
Right.
So we're at 5 p.m. in sunny Southern California, right?
Right.
And they're listening on maybe 106.5 FM, and that's great. They're driving home from work,
Right.
stuck in traffic,
Right.
and basically they're not even doing this. They're stuck.
They're just sitting. Yeah.
They're stuck in gridlock. They're not going anywhere. I've got them for the whole hour,
Right.
right, from 5 to 6. And so I tell them, look, if you don't like what you're listening to, change the channel.
Right.
Oh, by the way, I'm on that channel too. I'm on 102.3 FM. And even if you change the dial, this is great. Even if you change the dial,
Right.
go over the dial. Oh, guess what? I'm over there too. I'm on 1050 AM.
Right.
So you can't hear from me. So just sit down, shut up, and listen. And if you don't like it, call in and tell me that I'm out of my mind.
Right. It's and also do they think that these comments, you're not going home at night and putting your head on your pillow and crying like a baby. You're sleeping like a lamb. This is your job. You didn't get to where you are by playing it safe. So their comments are definitely not they can poke the bear, but it's not going to get them too far. So it's like, thank you for the comments. You're great. Yeah, exactly. Bye. See you later.
My meters on zero.
Exactly. So you shared a couple of places where people may be able to find you, but why don't you let everyone who are coast to coast, let them know where they can catch the show if they want to catch it?
Oh, sure. Now, folks, you can tune in live at thesportcircus.com if you're not in our listening audience in either Honolulu, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Chicago, New York, Toronto. We're in all those markets on ABC and NBC Sports affiliates, etc. And also, we're on the Westwood One News affiliate in Chicago, WCGO 1590. And by the way, I do want to mention that starting tomorrow, we have a free contest.
Ooh.
Now, remember speedball at the arcades and at the fair and so forth? Well,
yes.
We have a special skeet ball tournament. It's actually called Speedball, but it's the NCAA tournament TV timeout speedball tournament. It's free to sign up.
Okay.
Everything's free. You get a chance to win $300 in cash for first place, $150 for second place, $50 for third, and it goes for 3 days from the 15th through the 18th. It's free. Sign up, folks. It's free money is free money. If you're any good at skeet ball, right?
Right.
You got to win some free money.
Yeah. Who doesn't want some free money? Where can people also find you on social media?
On social media, they can follow The Sports Circus, and also on Twitter, The Sports Circus as well. And even myself, I think I've got a handful of followers on Twitter for Sal Circus.
Right.
That would be Sal Circus. But largely it is thesportcircus.com, and it is for Sports Circus on Facebook and Twitter.
Right. Thanks, Sal. Thank you so much for taking time for us today. I appreciate you. And I will be out in Vegas here in a couple of weeks. So when I come to town, I'll hit you up so that we can say hello in real life rather than just on the phone and through the Ethernet.
I'm going to put a microphone in front of you. You're going to come in studio.
Oh, I'd love it. I would absolutely love it. I'll make sure to carve out time so I can come on by.
Sounds great.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. And for those of you watching at home, thank you so much. Again, if you want to join the conversation with us, you can do so on Twitter at LTP Brand Radio or on Instagram at Let's Talk Personal. If you want to talk personally to me and you know that I love when you do, you can do so on Instagram at Firestarter CEO or on Twitter at Your Firestarter. Again, if you want those mini personal brand consultations, hit me up and I can schedule you for your 30-minute consultation. And they're fun and easy and painless, and they get you on the road of where you need to be with your personal brand. As always, I am Frances Reimers, your host, and I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you and good night.